Everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at Black Cat Crossing, a collection of short stories by Richard Sala, the great, late, belated cartoonist who passed away in the past couple of years, very young. Well, not very young, but too young to die. He throughout the 80s, 90s, and noughts, he contributed so many short stories to almost every great anthology. You know, he was in Raw. He was in just any great anthology of the time. He was cranking out these amazing short stories that were like a little bit Edward Gorey, lots of paranoia. His stories were always laden with paranoia. Very great little short stories. And later on in his life, though, he kind of stuck to the like serialized fiction. He had a comic from Fantagraphics Press for a while. What was it called? Evil Eye, I think. And to be honest, I didn't like those as much because he's so good at telling short little weird stories where, just like I said, they're almost like nightmare paranoid visions, and but always full of amazingly colorful, crazy, dark characters. Beautiful cover by Sala. Usually worked in black and white, but he did some color pieces, as we shall see in this issue. Nice inside front cover. This kind of sums up Sala's milieu. Just all these weird, creepy, menacing characters. This is from Kitchen Sink Press. It was published in 1993. It has 21 pages of new stuff. Most of the stories in here are from Blab and drawn in quarterly. One of the stories is from Raw number 3, which we just looked at on the channel here maybe a month or two back. Volume 2, number 3 of Raw. So when we get to that story, we won't be looking at it too closely because I just talked about it like a month ago. Nice little spot illos around the contents page. A lot of the characters that we shall meet within this comic. This is kind of a splash page, almost like another cover illustrating the first story, The Fellowship of the Creeping Cat. A lot of his stories they're kind of convoluted too. They were just these labyrinthian, is that a word? Did I say that right? Labyrinthian stories with just all these characters interacting, kind of crazy. So we see this meeting of these guys in cat masks, and they're saying, "Then it is decided the accused must die." And then we cut away to 25 years later. Very nebulous there. Basically, with this guy, Avery Finch, he's a failed author. Somehow he's inexplicably invited to a trendy party, and this weird old lady, Agnes, she's a rich lady, and she says, "I'll give you $10,000 to find my cat. I'm not sure who was in my house and took him, but here's a list of possible suspects. So, of course, don't mention my name, but go snoop around these characters." First one he meets is Professor Cheshire, who's an ichthyologist, and he's pretty rude to him. Just says, "Get out of here. I don't got time for this shit." The next one is Lou Grimalkin, who's a retired milkman. And he says, I hate cats. As he's leaving, he notices a copy of his book, which nobody bought, is on the bookshelf. And the guy's like, "I don't know. I buy a lot of books. I don't even know what that's doing there." Then he meets, as soon as Avery leaves, Lou Grimalkin has a sudden urge to take a vacation to someplace very far away. And as he's leaving, we see this shadowy figure who knifes him to death. He's got the cat ears. Next, he visits Mr. Manx, who has an electrolysis parlor. And there's no cats there. So another false lead. I like how they're all bald. They must seem to have this fetish about hairlessness. They're trying to convince him to get rid of the slight hair on his ears. It repulses him. The next name on the list is Angora, who's a dancer at this crazy club. When she sees him, he introduces himself, but she gives him a strange look and then hastily disappears into the back of the club. Meanwhile, back at the electrolysis parlor, we see this cat man again with his cat knife. She asks him, does he have an appointment? And he says, death never needs to make an appointment. So he kills her too. And I assume the other guy. So the last name on the list is Clifton Calico. That was kind of cute how all these suspects have cat names that sound like cats. There's all these cats in the house. He's like, oh, jackpot. This looks like the house of a kitty nabber. But when he walks in the house, the guy's dead with a cat knife in him. And he sees a bloody handkerchief with his own monogrammed initials on it. On the radio, it announces the electrolysis parlor murders. They're both dead. So Angora shows up with a gun on him. She takes him to Gogol's Bird Museum. And she tells him this crazy story, how there used to be a fellowship of the creeping cat. They were guys who wore cat masks and basically were vigilantes who would kill people who had somehow escaped justice. One day, though, there was some collateral damage, and 2 innocents were killed during one of their melees. So they disbanded forever out of, remorse. But I guess there was an orphan of one of those innocent people who were killed. They paid for his education to kind of make up for it, But when he reached a certain age, he figured out the truth. And he hasn't been heard from since. But he did vow revenge on these creeping cat people. So I guess all those guys that on his list, they were members of the Creeping Cat Fellowship. She says that someone made an attempt on my life earlier tonight. My father was a member, but he's already dead, so they want me in his place. And she says, you're in the same boat. Your father was a member too. But, he hasn't even seen his father since he was 12, Avery. So he's like, what? That's not fair. They're coming after me. She's like, welcome to reality. Yeah, you're on their shit list too. So he gets conked on the head. Someone behind him. When he wakes up, Angora's dead. He panics and flees. He goes back to Cheshire's lab, the ichthyologist. And he's dead with a cat knife in him. He's about to call the cops. And then the guy shows up, the orphan. He just calls himself the Creeping Cat. He has no fellowship. I love how Richard Salazar totally matches his stories. Like, it just has this, askew, nightmarish, style that fits his crazy stories so well. So this guy's, the Creeping Cat, tells him that I haven't killed you because you're my patsy. That's why there was all that weird evidence. The copy of your book on the bookshelf, your bloody handkerchief. He put his fingerprints everywhere. So it was all a setup. In fact, that lady, Agnes, that was him in disguise. Kind of was hard to believe. So Avery says, you made a crucial mistake in assuming I have something to lose. Everyone considers me a failure and a fool. My life is a big joke, so I don't really care. So he jumps after him. And he gets shot. But he pushes him into this piranha tank. And he's stripped to the bone, the Creeping Cat. Avery takes his mask. He can hear the police sirens wailing outside. And He walks out the door with the mask on and the cat knife in his hand. He will pay for the sins of his father, a sacrifice, the final link in a chain of tragedy. And he stumbles out into the night, right into a hailstorm of police bullets. I'm pretty sure this is one of the news stories because it says 93 on it. Richard Sala just, a lot of his stories, like, they all kind of are similar in a weird way. They're not, but they all have that story we just read, we just looked at. It's, they just have that feel. He's so good at doing it. This next one is called The Big Dark Zero. And this guy is having this disturbing dream. Man, he draws people so creepy and weird. He wakes up, and it turns out he walked right in front of a truck, this guy. Luckily, the driver swerved and just clipped him at the last second. So he has no memory. He's got amnesia. So he decides to just, like, leave San Francisco. He realizes that it's probably a fugue state. I guess some people have amnesia because they don't want to remember something. Their brain is, like, forcing them not to remember, to self-protect, I guess. So he realizes he's probably, has that. So he just says, I'm getting out of here. He goes to Mendocino, starts a new life. Except he kept having those nightmares, these crazy nightmares. So he decided to go back to San Francisco because the dreams were wearing him out. Maybe somebody would recognize him or he'd recognize something. And as soon as he gets to the city, some guy does recognize him. He says, "You, I'll kill you." And he fights back. And the guy gives up, but he leaves his coat. I guess in the scuffle, he lost his coat and ran away. There's a card in there, Dr. Adder Hypnotherapy. And he goes to the office. And this guy stumbles out of the shadows. Gasp, red diary, glue pot, less, more. Somebody had already stabbed Dr. Adder. He looks at a telescope. There's a telescope near the window, so he takes a peek, and he sees this beautiful woman. And then he sees a hand behind her, like menacingly. So he runs out of the room, runs across the street, runs up to the room where he thinks this woman was. She's already dead. It's an artist gallery. There's all these odd paintings around. He finds out her name's Laura Trilby. He finds a card in her pocket. And all the paintings are of her. There's no red diary there, so he doesn't know what that's all about. As he looks out the window, he sees some guys scuttling away, looking back at the building. So he trails them across town. And he ends up at this warehouse full of all this merchandise for this little cartoon character, Johnny Gloopot. T-shirts, mugs. And then the guy from earlier comes up behind him with a gun. And he turns the tables on him and shoots him. He has an ID on him, Arthur Marks. And he calls Dr. Adder, the hypnotist, his last words, glue pot, less, more. Because Johnny Gloopot apparently is by Lester Moore. He's the cartoonist. He figures out, he's trying to put all the clues together in his head. And he remembers that Les Moore is the reclusive cartoonist who draws Johnny Gloopot. And then it hit him. He's like, maybe I'm Lester Moore. And maybe there's some kind of conspiracy to take the strip away from me and thereby steal this merchandising fortune. He notices something pinned to the mirror. It's a gallery flyer. The paintings by the late Guy Wells. Red Diary. And it's at this gallery. Someone takes a shot at him. So he hightails it out of there and runs to the gallery. And the guy there says, I've been expecting you. And he says, you must be Pristine. That's one of the owners. He's got a gun out. He's got a gun on him. And it turns out he's not Les Moore. He's like, don't be absurd, you're not Les Moore. I might as well fill you in since I'm going to kill you anyway. So it turns out he is Guy Wells, the dead artist who they were having that show for. He was a successful artist, but then the critics started realizing he wasn't that great, and his 15 minutes of fame were over. So he had to do crappy commercial art. Here we see Laura Trilby, or whatever her name was, Lauren. She was his girlfriend. He starts doing, commercial art, and he starts creating these Johnny Glue Pot strips. He didn't even realize how popular they were. He was just so drinking all the time and just bitter. He's bitterly drawing these comics, just what am I doing with my talents? So this other, a fellow hack, Les Moore, stole your style, your ideas, and your girlfriend, Laura Trilby, that's her name. And all of them they chipped in to pay the hypnotherapist, Dr. Adder, to mesmerize you so you'd walk in front of that car. Then there was a resurgence in your old paintings. And then Les Moore comes in. He's got a gun too. He says, what are you waiting for? Why don't you kill him? And our protagonist says, listen, Pristine, once, Moore's been killing everyone, part of that scheme, he's going to kill you too. He's going to make all this money from the marketing. And these guys kill each other. And kind of a really harsh ending. He says, and me, I was a washed-up artist who couldn't play the game, who didn't know how to give the public what it craves. I was a has-been, a hack, worth more dead than alive. Not a pretty reality to wake up to, but I was stuck with it. And that's how it ends. Ouch. Anyway, we just have a little pin-up. Where is Christine Bruder? We see this private dick. He's like a typical, 40s private dick. He does seem to have way more alcohol on his desk than your average private dick with just his little flask. He mentions that he used to be top dog at his agency, but now he's kind of gets all the crappy cases. He says, I brought many weird criminals to justice, and this is such a Sala lineup. He's always drawing weird creeps like that. Look at this, almost like abstract expressionism. Just crazy way to draw these buildings. So he usually gets missing person cases. He has this one case he's got to find Christine Bruder. She's really beautiful. He mentions that. So he just basically does what a detective does, goes to all of her old haunts. There's also, at the same time, there's a pillow killer on the loose. There's a maniac who goes around with his own pillow smothering people at bus stops. Of course, that's a big case, so he doesn't get it. He's got to concentrate on looking for Christine Bruder. Look at these weirdos. These are just local shopkeepers he's showing photos to of Christine and asking if they know her. Nobody does. And there's this librarian who kind of acts weird when he shows him the picture. Sorry. He follows her to this really seedy part of town, but she loses him. So he finds a cozy spot to go over his latest notes. And we see a lot of bottles of booze again. He's mulling over the case the next day, and he can't figure it out. And he picks up a newspaper. He says, I'll divert myself for a little while. I'll read America's favorite comic strip, Johnny Glue Pot and His Pals, which which is kind of weird. It's almost like there's a Sala verse going on. And shows a typical Johnny Gloopot episode. They're pretty dumb. He says he wanted to be a cartoonist once. So he sees that librarian in the newspaper, latest victim of the pillow killer. Coincidence, or am I getting closer to the truth? The more and more he says to himself, oh, she's so pretty. If I could only find her, talk to her, ask her why. So he goes into this pet store, and the guy seems really surly to him. He's just like, beat it. And our protagonist says, keep your shirt on. Have you ever seen this girl? And he proceeds to tell him, the pet shop owner, he says, you've been coming into my shop for years with that same picture. I'm getting sick of it. Why don't you sober up and make yourself useful? Maybe get a real girl, if any would have you. And he feels like somebody slipped him a Mickey. Suddenly he's feeling wobbly on his feet. And then the pet shop owner comes at him. He says, I asked you nicely, now I'm going to throw you out. I like how he's got a little dog collar as a brass knuckle type thing. So he pulls out his gun and lets him have it. He has to make a full report to headquarters. He runs to headquarters. He feels like he's onto something. And the whole place is an empty lot. The giant purebred building where his agency was. Something dreadful has happened. The bitter truth hit me. I'm on my own now. I set out to finish my mission to find Christine Bruder, and this time I'm not going to be afraid to play rough. But first I need a place to hide out and plan my strategy. And he heads to this bar. So it's so amazing. Oh man, talk about a twist ending. Basically, this guy's just a fucking drunk. You realize at the end, he probably, that office is probably just, like his apartment where he conducts business. And just so subtly the way he shows you, like nobody slipped him a Mickey. He was just really fucking drunk. And he probably has this picture he found in a magazine of this woman that he's in love with. And he's searching for her. That Richard Sala could spin a yarn. There's just some, I think this was a back cover of a comic or something. Or maybe the front cover. So now we get the color section. I think most of these were back covers on Drawn and Quarterly magazine. He did a lot of those. And these are more kind of like just, little gags, not much time for a story. But really good stuff. Did I show you that one enough? Center it for you. What were they called? I should read about Credo, Gloom, One of the Wonders of the World. This is a 2-page story. Just another deluded narrator. That's what I should have mentioned. He's really good at that. The unreliable narrator. Or just a plain out wackadoo narrator. This one's just a crazy little story. I love this idea that this guy's insane. This narrator. And his neighbor hates him. Or at least in his paranoid mind, he thinks his neighbor hates him. So he's snooping around in the neighbor's house at his dog. Who's been trained to keep him at bay. It's a fight to the death. He kills the dog. And he has this dream about the dead dog. So the next morning, with some breadcrumbs and epoxy, he builds this dog head on top of his house. And the local university declares it to be one of the wonders of the world. But at the height of the celebration, the neighbor kills him. I just love that idea of building a giant dog head on your house. Nice colors. almost like pastels. A newlywed's heartache, a true confession is told to R. Sala. Cute little story. He packs a lot of story into one page. The Somnambulist. I like these little headers. And Night Delivery. This is a very un-Sala-like one. This is like almost like Sam Henderson. This is really silly. Not Sam Henderson, but just a typical gag. This guy gets a package and he's like, finally, it's here. It's a saw and a log. And then we see, I guess this guy couldn't get to sleep without the cartoon saw and the log over his head. That's a curious one for Sala. Another mad doctor, another fun one-pager. Just showing you being a mad doctor isn't all it's cracked up to be. It's a lot of hassle. This one is, speaking of Edward Gorey, this is called Psychorama. And it's a psychiatrist. It's all in rhyme. And all my clients unhinged and deranged end up in my casebook alphabetically arranged. And we see a whole alphabet. A is for Aldo, a sociopath, given to fits of irrational wrath. B is for Bertram, a Jekyll and Hyde. At his last family visit, he served cyanide. So they are just all like that. Very Edward Gorey. This is kind of a fun one, though, just because you get to see Richard Sala drawing all these, like, characters. That, you know, they're not just background characters, so, like, he definitely put thought into all their design, because, you know, they're the main character of their panel. This was a tricky rhyme. When I read the first line, I was like, how is he going to rhyme with that? He says, G is for Gunther, who had schizophrenia. They found his wife planted beneath, schizophrenia. They found his wife planted beneath the gardenias. That's a tricky rhyme. I like this guy here. That's a great face. So it goes through the whole alphabet. All these little nut jobs. I should center these more. Look at all these freaks. Man, such manic cartooning. I think this is the mailbox is just like totally bent over, stretching like in an old Max Fleischer cartoon. It's about to dance or something. And I just love this, the body language there. More of them. So here's the story Proxy that was in Raw Volume 2, Number 3. We just looked at this last month. If you're curious about the story, look it up. It's an amazing story. It's written by Tom DeHaven, the great novelist. And this is just, and Richard Sala's artwork totally fits perfectly with Tom DeHaven. I don't know if maybe Tom DeHaven wrote it with Sala in mind, because it is almost like a Richard Sala story. Just all this strange, paranoid, like, what the hell's going on? It's really nice stuff. This is one of the best short stories in comics. I think it's up there, like it's in the top 100. It's just a really amazing story. Just showing off the art again. But, great stuff. Then we see this next story, the peculiar case of Dr. V. And this is another, this is a great little story. I guess this narrator, he keeps a picture of Dr. Velasco in his pocket. She was this brilliant surgeon. He was her assistant, and he totally had a crush on her. She worked at the veterinary hospital. She She was also really good with the pets. She loved all the pets and was kind to them. He's in awe of her. One day, this guy shows up at the office. He's got bandages on his face. He says, "Take me to Dr. Velasco. Take me to her place." And he holds a knife to his throat. So he drives her to Dr. Velasco's. Dr. Velasco's like, "What's the meaning of this, Rollo?" That's the name of the narrator. And he's like, "So you're Dr. Velasco, the one who sells animal organs for experimental transplants with humans." She's like, "I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Get out of here." And he says, "Some clinic south of the border gave me the heart of a rabid dog. After I recovered, I tore the place to shreds and came here for revenge." But then Dr. Velasco pulls a gun, and he savagely leapt at her. A candle is overturned, puts the curtains on fire, and soon the fire envelops the whole house. And Dr. Velasco goes down, shooting at this dude, and he's basically ripping her to shreds. So there wasn't much he could do, and he just ran away, our narrator. That was a long time ago. I finally found work at another veterinary hospital so I could continue selling those animal organs. Oh, it's so pitch perfect. Because you have no idea. The narrator just seems like a sweet guy. It's a little nebbish. That's great. This is Hypnorama. And this is all about subliminal advertising. And the narrator is a graphic artist, just like Richard Sala was. Richard Sala did lots of graphic design for like board games and products. And you probably heard this before, that like supposedly advertisers put little subliminal messages, like if you zoom in on an ice cube in a Coca-Cola ad, there'll be like maybe a skull, maybe the word sex, or buy this. Look at that nose there. That's freakier than any Greg Irons baboon nose. That's so weird. So here he is, young graphic artist. One day his bosses are like, I want you to attend a special meeting of hand-picked artists. They go down to this basement chamber, and he never even knew existed. There's all the bigwigs are there, and these are the clients, these creepy-looking dudes who look like they're in some, I don't know, work for Fu Manchu or something. And he talks basically more about the way subliminal advertising works. And this is actually all true, I think. I think I've read articles about this. And I think maybe they banned it. Maybe you're not allowed to do it anymore. So these guys basically are like, okay, we'll do it. During the lecture, he notices a large man standing by the door. He was staring back at me with a gaze that gave me a chill. This creepy-looking guy. They were sworn to secrecy, and they got to work. He kind of liked it. He's putting these subliminal things in. It gave him a feeling of power. One day, he's at the dentist office. He's thumbing through a magazine. He sees an ad. And after gazing at it, he almost feels ill. And the more he looked, the more he saw. And in the photograph of a glass of cola, he saw a menagerie, a nightmarish menagerie from hell, a twisted, sick vision, an orgy of perverted sex, bestiality, and intertwining patterns of the most vile obscenities. It pushed him over the edge. He finally questioned himself. It's like, what are we doing to society? This is unethical. He tries to tell all of his friends and family members, and they all think he's just crazy. He's like, look, you can see the word sex in this ice cube. And they're like, no, we can't. You're a weirdo. So he quit his job one day and never went back. Called in sick. He's been hiding out in his house because he thinks they're onto him. And now we see him in his house just ranting. I must warn people, learn how to look before it's too late. And we see that creepy guy from the meeting climbing in the window with a knife. So he's not crazy. They sent him to silence him. And then it says, hard to believe, absurd. Read Subliminal Seduction by Wilson B. Key, the book that blew the whistle on the advertising industry and served as the inspiration for the story. So I think a lot of this was just true stuff that Richard Sala found interesting and shoved it into a story. Oh, this one's great. Judy Drude, Girl Detective. Very Nancy Drew-like. I like how he draws it in a more slick, clean style. This is 1993 as well. This might be done just for this graphic novel collection. I think he used Judy Drude later on more. He did more stories about her, but not the same one, because this one, we'll see. So Judy's father, lovable old Colonel Drude, is arrested for a series of unusually vicious murders. You know, just like in one of those books. And then, like, the girl detective's got to clear her father's name. It's obviously fake. So she's going to prove his innocence. She eavesdrops on some of her father's friends who don't look very savory. In fact, they look pure evil. She discovers her father's the owner of several nightclubs. Interesting nightclubs. Look at these. They're like total porno palaces. Her father's live-in maid has a curious secret. Where this is obviously some big thug who's in drag. She finds under her father's study, there's an underground laboratory. I don't know why I said laboratory. I've never said that in my life. I've always said laboratory, but that just came out of me. She comes face to face with a deadly dwarf. I like that guy. Turns out to be her father's trusted servant. So Judy tracks down everyone who testified against her father, even though her father apparently really is a bad guy, it looks like. So even though she's the heroic girl adventurer, she's basically assassinating people who went against her father. Finally, crucial evidence is found. Unfortunately, it seemed to prove her father's guilt, but Judy refuses to believe it. Hassled by the cops who wish to question her for concealing evidence, Judy has no choice but to shoot it out. That's how it ends. Her cursing at the coppers. Sala's so good at that. Like, totally, you expect one thing, and then you realize, oh, it's not that thing. I like this All About Me autobiography. It's very silly. I like trouble, action, thrills, and above all, kicks. Just love the cartoony in this. The panels just have this nice rhythm to them. The body language of the character. It's fun. A little one-panel gag. There goes old Parker again. And then we have an inside back cover. Which, to be honest, I wouldn't even peg that as Sala. Some of these faces are very un-Sala-like. It's almost like Sala's collaborating with Gilbert Hernandez, even though it looks way more like Richard Sala. But of course, you got the telltale buildings in the back, the way Sala drew them, all wonky. And that guy's very Sala, obviously. But her face doesn't look like that to me. It doesn't look Sala-ish. Nice little back cover in color. And there you have it, guys. A really nice collection. There's 2 or 3 more collections of Sala. Hypnotic Tales, I think, was the first one in the 80s. And I can't remember the name of the other one. But he's had a few. And, I mean, if you like this stuff, they're all great. It's just his later stuff, when he started doing, like, serialized stories that read for 8 issues. He was just so good at doing these little short stories. And thankfully, he did a lot of them. And it's really sad that he died. I actually know a guy who was really close to him in San Francisco. They worked together, I think, or knew each other. And it's just sad. Such a great talent. Yeah, I guess that's it. I'm getting choked up thinking about it. Black Cat Crossing. I mean, there's obviously out of print, but I have a feeling they're not that expensive. Nobody really cares. It's mostly reprint. But look for it. It's a great read. And that story I didn't go over because it was in Raw. That's like the cream of the crop. But I didn't talk about it because I just did a month ago. So that's it for tonight's video. I hope you enjoyed it, everyone. And I hope to see you here again at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.